Undivided, a show that uses common sense and doesn't care about your feelings, with your host, Van Daniel. Welcome back, everybody. So last week's show was based on the Ahmaud Arbery case. It was very controversial. I got a lot of pushback on social media and things like that. However, one person stuck out. We had a very interesting conversation, and I wanted to bring that to the show because I think it's important to gain perspective, not only for myself, but maybe, for everybody out there as well. His name is Dave McKnight. He's an aspiring activist and dedicated patriot. And I want to say thanks for coming on the show, Dave.
Hey, thanks for having me, Van. I agree with you. I think it's important to have the perspective.
I think that's where we go wrong is we don't have these conversations. Everybody just goes off in their own direction and nobody gains perspective. And I need to gain perspective, and that's why I brought you on. If you can't tell, I'm not a black male.
Right.
So this doesn't hit me. It doesn't affect me like it affects you. I want to know what that's like, and I want to make sure that we get the right message out there.
Not at all. I firmly believe that if we don't have the conversation, right, and we just cancel out the viewpoint of another, right, then you don't gain perspective, right? You don't gain the ability to see from each other's eyes or walk in each other's shoes. So what I like to use this 6-9 perspective theory, right? If I draw a 6 on the ground and you stand on one side, I stand on the other side, you'll see a 6, I'll see a 9. It's not till we start to move toward one another in the same fashion that we will gain the same perspective and be able to agree with what we're seeing, right? So that's kind of the perspective I want to bring here.
That's a great analogy because, like I talked about just a second ago, like you're on the other side of this,
right?
Versus I am, and I want to know your perspective. So, getting into the Ahmaud Arbery shooting, in the first part was me talking about Ahmaud Arbery and how I felt like he wasn't 100% innocent in the situation, right. And I think they turned it off.
Yeah,
because I go on to say, although he made this mistake, or although he wasn't supposed to be there, or whatever you want to say, it wasn't worth his life,
right?
In any stretch of the means.
Right. I think when it comes to the pushback, the reason you received the pushback is because in today's society and in the media in general, when a young African American male is killed, the first thing they do is they vilify the person that's dead. They have no way to say, hey, that's not me. Don't say that about me. They're dead, right? So the minute you said that, it stokes that feeling inside of me of, okay, he's doing the same thing that everyone else does and vilifies this guy. He's dead. He can't defend himself. You know what I mean?
When I did the video, I obviously didn't look at that side of it. Or I guess like we talked about earlier, that perspective of it. Yeah, really what I was trying to say was, in my opinion, and this is my opinion, this is not a court of law in any way, I don't think the kid did anything wrong.
Right.
That's my opinion. Now, like I said, I believe that this whole case will hinge on whether they label that label that structure a construction site or a residence, because that then gets into the verbiage of what the crime they could classify it as. Irregardless, the man died. I call him a kid because he's 25 years old. His whole life is ahead of him. But I do understand what you're saying as far as, it appeared that I was just vilifying this young man, like, oh, just another white dude trying to make it, the black guy's fault. Because that does happen a lot. I had somebody mention on the thread that when a black guy gets shot, we talk about his background.
Right.
And when a white guy gets shot by a black guy, we talk about the black guy's background.
Right.
Right. And that's unfair.
So if you look at it from my perspective or from my viewpoint as a black male, right, I go, as a child, I'm cute, right? Maybe not me per se, right? But, as a child, I'm cute, but as I grow, I become dangerous, right? That's my life track. I'm 6'2", I'm 240 something pounds, right? So I'm viewed as dangerous. Now this was pretty much started back in the 80s. You know, I was deemed a super predator in the 80s. These were terms that were used to define black men. But if we look at the decade that led up to the 80s and when they started this super predator, there was 40 serial killers that were white, that had more than 5 bodies. You know how many there were that were black? 7. There were 7 that had 5 or more confirmed bodies. But African Americans were deemed as super predators, like we were this thing that couldn't be stopped, you know? And I see that as being unfair, because if we look at the numbers, you deem me that way, but the crimes are committed at the same rate. But somehow it's worse when I do it.
And that's why when I have these conversations, we need to grow away from that. And when I put that video out, I mean, I guess from my perspective, I wasn't looking at it from your perspective. I was looking at it as a clear cut. This kid entered a structure he wasn't supposed to be in. That's a crime. You know, that's why they chased him down. They did what they thought was lawful. Like I said, we'll figure that all out later on in court. But I also went on to say that, you know, I don't know what spooked the kid. And to this point, that's part of the story hasn't come out, why he started running, whether he got caught or whether he was just done and he was just going to, you know, be on his way, or I don't know. Either way, his mind was already in flight mode. Yeah. And we only have 2 modes when fear strikes us: fight or flight. And he was already in flight mode. So when they trapped him essentially with guns, I don't fault him for only feeling he only had one other thing to do. You know, I can't run from a bullet. You know?
You can't.
So he tried to fight his way out of it. And I don't fault him for that. I do fault the McMichaels, because who does what they did?
Lots of people. And that's the problem.
They already called
Lots of people do what they did.
Yeah.
But they didn't. They didn't call the police until after the engagement had already started. So there's been another video that has been, I guess, leaked or published, whatever you want to call it. Yeah. They chased this young man for 4 minutes. Wow. So the video that first came out wasn't even the full thing. This man had been running away from these people for 4 minutes. And to engage him with shotguns, now he's running empty-handed. And then we look at the retired officer who had already, before he retired, they removed his right to make arrests because he failed to keep training. He didn't attend use of force training at all. And he didn't attend firearms training. So they suspended his ability to arrest. And then he decides that now the state can take your ability away to arrest, but you're going to do a citizen's arrest? Come on.
That's mind-blowing, in my opinion, that they even did it. They chased a man for 4 minutes?
Yes.
Like, what do you want the kid to do? I guess I look at things with the deductive reasoning, right?
Right.
So my question is when they said, "Hey, grab the shotguns, get in the truck, we're gonna go get this dude," how did they think that was gonna end?
Exactly the way that it did.
Yeah, I don't think they were thinking that, because I'll be honest with you, I don't know that they're all that intelligent. However, I think the moment got the better of them, which is, in my opinion, inexcusable, because he's a former police officer, and I hold police officers to a higher standard regardless.
Yep. Don't hold me to a standard you can't keep.
Exactly. So he didn't use deductive reasoning. He just, ran out the door, chased this kid who, after 4 minutes, is probably terrified at this point.
Yeah.
Like, he stopped running because he was probably wore out and just absolutely terrified. I don't understand the reasoning behind it. I even dug into the racist aspect of this. There's a photo floating around of the old man, a picture that may look like him, may or may not be. I don't know. It's not confirmed. In the KKK, if that's the case, and there's a whole nother.
No, it's been confirmed.
It has been confirmed.
It has been confirmed. It is him in the picture. It was taken from his social media. He posted the picture on his social media.
Oh, wow.
And then after the picture came out, he took it down.
Of course he did. I mean, internet's forever. I guess that's what's disturbing to me is in 2020, we have, I don't know when this guy retired, not how long ago it was, probably, a year or two.
3 years.
3 years ago. So not very long ago, 2017. even in 2017, that we have police officers that are participating in a hate group. Now, I know it's out there.
Yeah.
There are people that have alter lives, and, you know, people you wouldn't even imagine doing and participating in groups. But you can't tell me that somebody else on that force didn't know.
Right.
And if that's the case, even in 2017, how do you not come forward?
Well, it's the blue code.
Yeah, it's
the blue code. You're going to back your buddy, you know, and if this is going to affect his livelihood, then you're not going to say anything. And it goes deeper than that, because this police department, the chief of police, right, has been arrested. And 3 officers, Gilley County, something like that. Glenn County. Yeah. Glenn County. They've been arrested because they participated in cover-ups before. I dug into this case simply because it's too familiar.
Yeah,
this is reminiscent of the Trayvon Martin case, right? Mm-hmm. And a man goes out against the advisement of law enforcement officials, and then a young boy dies that had the right to be in the area. Ahmaud Arbery is the same way. He lived roughly a mile and a half from where he was killed. We look at the tapes that the owner sit out. He visited that place as it was being built. So it stands to reason that he runs this route pretty often, mm-hmm. right? He noticed it. There's a water source there. No one's there. I can go get some water. The owner came out and said, hey, that's probably what he was doing, was getting water. There's a water source in the front. There's a water source in the back. Mm-hmm. Every video shows him enter through the front, go to what appears to be the back, and then leave. What makes this stand out to me as it was a hate crime and racist in nature, mm-hmm. is many people entered that dwelling. Kids, adults, couples. He was the only one chased. He was also the only one that was black. It just stands out to me that, you know, the words that they used to say, let's go get this dude wasn't the word they used. Right? It just wasn't.
I don't think there's any doubt in my mind anymore. I mean, of course there was in the beginning, because as soon as something like this happens, mm-hmm. there's always, as soon as it is publicized as a racist event, people will find things to make it racist, whether it is or isn't.
Right.
So I'm always hesitant. So I always take a step back regardless of things, especially when major news organizations latch onto something. This guy obviously was a racist. So it absolutely now looks racially motivated.
Right.
And I had taken the stance before I knew that, this is news to me just now, that I felt like it was probably racially motivated in a different way, if that makes sense. I didn't think that, right. I looked at it as, yes, they went after him because he was black, but not because they were racist, because he was different than everybody else. Mm-hmm. That sounds ignorant for me to say, like, oh, that's racism. That's the definition of racism. But at the same time, like, if I see the videos I seen were a couple entering the house at night, some kids on their bikes that came in and out, and then a bunch of videos of Ahmaud, who'd been there numerous times. Now, in my opinion, whether he was getting water or not, what was he hurting?
No one.
What was he? I mean, he had been there numerous times. Cool. He never took anything. The owner was obviously aware of the fact that people were in and out of this place. One thing that I did find disturbing, one of my that's why they did it, or what I thought, is when the homeowner has text messages from when they started building, one of the police officers told them, hey, if you have any problems, you have a retired police officer who lives right down the road, let him know. So they were like, hey.
Don't call us, call him.
Yeah, so they were like, hey, go call him. He'll help you handle it. Okay, cool. Hey, can you keep an eye on our property? And he was like, sure, I'm retired. I have nothing better to do. So there's that. And I was like, aha, that's why they tracked the guy down. But as the evidence rolls in, and I knew it would, and I plan on doing another video on this regardless, as it comes in, it just piles on top of these cats. I would say that it's not a slaying as or an execution, as some people have said. I would say that I think it started out as, we're going to get this dude.
Right.
And then when they cornered him and he fought back, because why wouldn't you fight back?
Exactly.
Then the gun went off. You know, I think the gun went off by the kid, the young man, probably in the struggle. Now,
the first shot.
The first. That's what I mean. The first shot. The second shot, absolutely not. That was intentional.
Well, there were 3.
I didn't hear 3. I heard 2. So
no, there was 3 shots, and all 3 of them were into Ahmaud Arbery. If you watch the video, the only person's hand who's ever near the trigger is the younger McMichael. Yeah. Ahmaud has his hands on the barrel, so he didn't pull the trigger. You know.
I never thought that.
What stands out to me, I want to go back a little bit when you said, you know, you were like, oh, that might sound racist. No, what you described was the definition of bigotry. And I think that's what a lot of people get confused when we start talking about racism and we start talking about it. When we look at the definition of racism, right? Racism is a dislike of somebody because of their race by another person, but it's because the person feels their race is superior. Right. So people say, you know, blacks are racist too. No, they're not. They're bigoted. Yes. They're prejudiced. Yes. In response to racism. Absolutely. But African Americans have never professed superiority. They've always said, we just want to be treated equally. We don't want to be viewed as criminals. We don't want to be viewed as monsters. We want to be viewed as human beings. So I think in that struggle, the natural inclination of that young man was he was fighting someone that potentially could hurt him. And then he pulled the trigger until that person was dead. And the reason I came to that conclusion is if you did not mean to kill that person, you would not roll them over when you were done. There was no remorse shown in that video at all.
No.
You rolled a dead body over.
Well, on top of that, I mean, you see after the first shot, he stumbles.
Yeah.
You know, and then after the second shot, he goes down. Now, I've been in life or death situations. I've been in shootings.
Right.
You know,
when
it's accidental, you render aid immediately.
Yeah.
It's like a kid, right? When a kid does something wrong, he runs away.
Yeah.
Just because he doesn't know what to do.
Right.
If you accidentally shoot somebody like that, you're just like, oh my God. You would drop the gun. I would have, and I'm well trained with a gun.
Right.
Like I would have been like, oh you know, and then I would have been like, oh my God, are you okay? And then I would have applied pressure and done the things that even if I wasn't trained, the police officer or the, you know, retired police officer, I do in quotes because I don't respect him as a person, knowing the things that I know, but he knew, he was trained.
Right.
He could have jumped down and at least applied pressure, at least tried to save this kid's life.
Right.
You know, but there wasn't any of that.
Which is to me is what states the intent of your purpose of pursuing it, right? Your purpose was you didn't care how this came out because in their mind, if I have to play the judge or the person that's looking at this and trying to decipher the intent of the individual, there's nothing in that video that shows me you didn't intend to kill him.
And that's kind of the thing. Like, and as the facts keep rolling out, I mean, it only goes against the McMichaels and their story. I mean,
right.
When this all started, I was looking, I try to look at this objectively because like I said earlier, I don't have a horse in this race.
Right.
If they are found guilty, by all means, they're found guilty. I don't care. You know what I mean?
Right.
It doesn't affect me, you know, either way. I guess that's insensitive of me to say, but like personally, you know, I'm not emotionally attached to this.
Right.
So I was able
to,
and I wanted to step back and look at this objectively and look at from both sides. And that's how I was able to say, like, this kid was already running. He was already in flight mode, and then you cornered him, and then he went into fight mode. Like, that's why I was able to look at that. Like, maybe this is his mindset. And before the facts all came out, I look at the McMichaels mindset, or I tried, and obviously the facts have changed how I feel about this. However, initially I looked at it as, well, there had been robberies in the neighborhood, right? They were asked to watch this house, right? Now there's a 25-year-old, which they looked at as a man, Because like you said before, what do? You demonize and demonsterize people you don't know or don't understand.
Yep.
And he'd come back numerous times to that one house. And I think my initial thought was they had that, aha, he's the one.
Right.
He's obviously the one that's been breaking into everybody's house because he doesn't look like us. And he's been here numerous times. And he's in a house he's not supposed to be in. And I think that's what was the trigger, the racist stuff and all that stuff. I mean, that comes out after, and obviously like the intent. But I guess I didn't want to, I wasn't trying to demonstratize the kid in the last video.
Right.
I was trying to explain, like I said, before all the facts came out, I was trying to explain like why they may have tried to go after him.
Right.
Not that it, like I said, it should have cost the kid his life. In my opinion, at the worst he was doing was trespassing.
Right.
The absolute worst, because he didn't take anything. I mean, I've heard experts on television say, well, it looked like he was casing the place. And I think to myself, and I'm like, what does casing a construction site look like?
Exactly.
There's no walls,
Nothing.
Now, do I think he was in there like placing his furniture? No, I don't. But, I look back at when I was a kid, or I don't know that I did it as 25, but I mean, I've done it. I don't know how old I was, but as an adult, I've done it. I have looked at construction sites before out of curiosity.
Oh, yeah. I've done it at 25.
As a child, I did it a lot more. But even as an adult, I have seen a neighborhood that was maybe under construction and went into the neighborhood. I was like, oh, cool. This is where this is going to go. Okay, there's the pipes for this. My family comes from a construction background.
Right.
So
it's interesting.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those things like, can I visualize where this stuff's going to go? And unfortunately, I don't know. I mean, maybe this kid was interested in architecture or maybe being an engineer,
Right.
Maybe he was interested in something his mom or his family didn't even know about. Maybe it was construction. We don't know, unfortunately, because, he's dead.
His life's gone. And we'll never know.
Yeah. And that's what I'm saying. We'll never know why he was in that house. That's kind of my problem with the whole ordeal. This kid will never have a chance to tell his story.
Never.
Now we're going to have to sit in a court there. Well, I'm not going to sit in the courtroom because I'm obviously not in Georgia, but if I was, I would try to get into this courtroom.
I would too.
Because I want to hear what they have to say. Because there's only one side to this story. Yeah. And I want to hear what they have to say about this whole ordeal. I mean, this kid, I just can't imagine making decisions, and it was compounded. It wasn't just one decision that led to this kid's death.
It was several bad decisions.
Like over and over and over. Like this is, to me, was like the worst case scenario you could come up with when it comes to decisions.
Yeah. To me, I look at it like this though, because you have an organization that this man was involved with, whether it was neo-Nazism, KKK, whatever you want to call it, right? That has been allowed to operate inside of America unchecked for years, right? So if we look at it, and just going to throw some stuff out there to kind of frame why this hits the African American community, in specifically African American males, right? Okay. Is because African Americans were freed as slaves, right? June 19th, 1865. 6 months later, in December, on Christmas Eve, the KKK was founded. Since that time, they've operated a terrorist organization inside of America. In 1871, they were deemed terrorists, and an act was passed called the KKK Act. I think it was the Third Forces Act that they passed in 1871 to authorize the President of the United States to use military force to suppress the KKK. But it didn't happen. From that point forward, there has been 3,000 plus African Americans slain by this one organization. And that, when you have that type of history in an organization, and you have a person that was in a position of authority allowed to operate inside of that, of course they think they're untouchable. It wasn't until 2019 that we said, no, they are a terrorist organization and the Department of Homeland Security is going to look into it. You're talking 1865 to 2019 is a long time. When you have people that, you know, they put on their robes, they hide, right? And then they go on to be our cops. They go on to be judges. They go on to, and they're operating unabatedly. And why it's scary when we look at this and why all that information is necessary to look at when it comes to this case is because if we continue to allow that thought process to be pervasive inside of America, I will never be safe. So when people say Black Lives Matter, they're not saying that Black Lives matter more than white lives. They're not saying that we just want them to matter as much. Stop demonizing me, because as a stand-up American, right, I have a past, but if I'm shot dead today, you know, the time I spent doing great things should not be overshadowed by the few mistakes I made when I was a kid, simply because I'm Black. You know, does that make sense?
Absolutely makes sense. You know, I have a story as well. So I'm originally from Michigan. So I joined the Army when I was 18 years old, but I was recruited for the KKK before I ever joined the Army.
Right.
When I was still in high school. Now, it's always been an absolute ridiculous organization to me because it's built on ignorance, and I knew that as a child. And it's learned because of any number of reasons can drive you there. I'm not going to assume it's just one, but the biggest problem is it's passed down.
Yeah.
From generation to generation. It's that mindset that that those individuals pass on to their children.
Right.
And their children do it not even knowing.
Yep.
You know, so it's
but then those same people, what's interesting is those same people will deny the fact that I was pulled over because I was Black.
Yes, of course.
But they want to have it both ways, and that's the ignorance of racism. That's the ignorance of what happens in the society. And it's because people like to have conversations, but they can't take the emotions out and talk about the factual statement. If you think that a cop pulled you over because he was Black, why is it so far-fetched that a cop pulled me over because I was Black?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I had a gun drawn on me by a police officer because I was white in the wrong neighborhood.
Yeah.
I'll tell you a story. 17 years old, driving to Detroit to meet some friends to go to a Tigers game. And so I'm in my mom's, like, you know, sedan, you know, and no tint on the windows, obviously, because it's my mom's car. Well, I get out the wrong exit and I'm lost in Detroit. I immediately notice nobody looks like me.
Right.
I'm like, okay, probably need to not be in this neighborhood. So I'm driving. I see a police officer. So I whip in, you know, like, I park and I get out because the police officer's in his car. And this police officer jumps out of his cruiser, grabs out his pistol, and tells me to stop. And I'm like, I'm lost. He's like, yeah, get back in your car, go down here, take a left, you'll get back on the freeway. And I was just like, wow. Like that's when my mind opened. Like, he didn't do that. He did that because I was out of place.
Yeah.
And I guess I didn't. I mean, it happened to me. So if it happened to me, you know, not that he pulled me over. I mean, I put myself in that situation, which, however, I mean, the same reaction happened. Mm-hmm. You don't belong here. There's something wrong.
Right.
And typically, probably the white people that went in that neighborhood were there for not good things, either drugs or, you know, I mean, criminal activity, probably, because they obviously didn't live there because it was all Black neighborhood.
Right.
So, I mean, I try to keep it in perspective sometimes, like, oh, you know, maybe they thought, you know, you didn't look like you were supposed to be in the neighborhood, you know? Right. But that's like that happened once in my lifetime. Right. And if it happened once in your lifetime, you would probably have that type of mentality, like, yeah, okay, it happens.
I've had it happen 6 times.
Yeah, I'll say, but when it continually happens, it's like, all right, come on.
Like, yeah. Now imagine that situation happening to you But prior to that situation happening, there had been 25 plus years of someone telling you or telling that officer that white people were super predators, that white people, white males, right, are killers. They're thugs. They're murderers. They're this, they're that, right? Mm-hmm. Do you think that situation would have ended with a simple go turn left and get back on the freeway?
Yeah, I mean, we'll never know, but
right.
I think that it would probably have followed with. I think there have been more questions.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you it wouldn't have because I've lived that situation, right? Yeah. I was riding around with 3 of my white friends and, we were just having a good time chilling, mm-hmm. right? We get pulled over and I'm like, all right, cool. Cop comes to the passenger side. Now, I'm not driving the vehicle. I'm riding shotgun. I'm in the passenger side of the vehicle. My window is down because I'm like, hey, cops are coming up to my side of the window. I'm going to roll my window down so that they can talk.
Yeah.
I was yanked through the window. He reaches in, undoes my seatbelt, then opens the door, pushes me back through. I fall on the ground. I'm not resisting. Yeah. I'm like, yo, what's going on? He picks me up, slams me on the car, pulls his gun, puts it to the back of my head, and says, and I quote, "Give me a reason, nigger. Give me a reason." That was his quote. That's what he said. Apparently, I fit the description of someone they were looking for. They caught the man that they said I fit the description of. The only thing we had in common is that we were black.
Well, yeah.
He was 5'9", I was 6'2". He had braids. I was rocking an afro. He had a beard. I was a clean-shaven kid. There was nothing we had in common other than we were black.
There's stories like that just absolutely infuriate me because, like I said in the beginning of this, I hold police officers, I hold people in position of a higher standard.
Right.
It's actually scientifically proven that when you view a race outside of your own, you view it differently.
Yeah.
So when another black guy looks at you, he looks at the shape of your head. He notices where your eyes are, your eyebrow. He notices all the intricacies because when he looks in the mirror, he sees different intricacies, right? But when a white person looks in the mirror, they see different intricacies. So we don't pick up on the micro intricacies of somebody's face. And that's why eyewitness reports are so difficult to go off of, because now if it's a black man that's identifying a black man, you're better off with their description than a white guy, trying to explain a black guy, and then vice versa, even trying to explain a white guy, black guy trying to explain a white guy. You'll pick up on the big things like, oh, he had this color hair, oh, he had a beard, or he didn't have a beard, or whatever. But when you're like, what color?
He was white.
Yeah, like he was white. Like, what do you want? He looks like a regular white guy.
Right.
And
draw a picture of a white guy. That's what he looked like.
Yeah, that's exactly what he looked like. And that's why it's so frustrating, or I can imagine how frustrating it is for a black male for that to go through that.
Yeah.
Because obviously this is a white cop.
Yeah.
Who knew nothing about you. I mean, if you fit more than that description, okay, I get it. Right? Yeah. But you didn't. Like 4 inches different. I get if somebody
hairstyle completely different.
Yeah, dreads don't come out into an afro.
You can't just take braids or dreads out of your hair and turn it into an afro, in 30 minutes. You just can't do it.
That takes time.
It takes a lot of time.
And I guess that comes down to also is, that you were talking to me on social media about being culturally sensitive.
Yeah.
I'm not good at it. I mean, I view things in right or wrong, typically.
Right.
If you ask my wife, she would tell you the exact same thing. I'm a robot.
Yeah.
Like I see things.
Right or wrong, black or white.
Yeah. I see them, right or wrong. And that's why when I did the video, and I think that's why I got so much pushback, is I wasn't sensitive to the background to why he felt that way. I was just like, hey, listen, he trespassed. They tried to apprehend him. Bad things went wrong.
Right.
And that was kind of, and now listen, the picture.
That brings up a key point, though. Mm-hmm. You are afforded the opportunity not to be culturally sensitive. because it's not been ingrained in you that you have to be, right? Me, on the other hand, I have to be culturally sensitive. I have to understand my own people and the other people that I interact with, because it determines how they're going to view me later. You see what I'm saying? So it's a nature that we kind of have to change, in my opinion, in the country, because I'm no different than you. You cut my skin, I bleed red just like you, right? Yeah, we have some cultural differences. We, may have even grown up similar based on if you grew up in a city or if you grew up in the country. We may have come up similar. But the notion and the idea that African Americans should be somehow treated differently or their lives are worth less than a white male needs to just go away. Because in all actuality, this country was built by blacks.
Yeah.
That's a factual statement.
On the backs of black
men. On the backs of us, right? There's people that wore marks to build this country. Yeah. But yet, somehow, if I say Black Lives Matter, well, white lives matter too. Cool. They've mattered the entire time this country's been here. Blue lives matter. Cool. They also matter too. But mine matters. Don't push my struggle to the side to justify what you want to say. And I think that is the message that we must share with people, because these times need to stop. The days of someone being scared of me simply because I'm black need to end. Be scared of me because you've seen me fight and I'm fine.
Yeah, for justifiable reasons.
Be scared of me because I'm black and I take offense.
No, absolutely. As you should. Before I get into that, like into the Black Lives Matter thing. So I have not been a fan, complete, I'm saying honestly, I've not been a fan of the Black Lives Matter movement. There are some things that have been said and done through that movement that I completely disagree with. Now, does that encompass the entire movement? Absolutely not. I know that.
Right.
Just like not all white people are racist, not all, however, the way you explain it, I understand that. But I think the pushback that I always had on it was the way you explain it, you want equality. And I'm on board. I want everybody's life to matter the exact same, because in my opinion, no life is worth more than others, except when you talk about my children versus somebody else. Then obviously I have a preference. But however, I think that was always my pushback is, no, all lives matter. That's always my pushback is, no, your life matters as much as mine does. Yeah. All lives matter, in my opinion.
Right.
And I think that's always, not always, because people are still ignorant, but I think that's always the pushback that I give people is, no. Yes, Black Lives Matter, but all lives matter.
Right.
But
do me a favor.
Absolutely.
Name me the time in history that white lives didn't matter.
In this country, like I said, as a whole, no.
Right. So
you're right.
When we say Black Lives Matter, it's not saying that we're discounting white lives. No, we're just saying, hey, it's time that we matter to the other people too. Right. You're right. All lives matter. So if you say all lives matter, then you agree Black Lives matter.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. So why do we have to say all lives matter? Because we've already established that white lives have never not mattered.
No, I understand that. But what I mean, but I think by classifying like Black Lives Matter, I think the issue with that is the implication is not only that, well, white lives have always mattered. Well, by saying that Black Lives matter, well, do Asians' lives matter? Asians' lives? You know what I'm saying? And if you look back at their history, we actually put them in concentration camps not too long ago. Well, it's a long time ago for us, but if you look at history, you know what I'm saying, within the last 50 years, we have put them in concentration camps, grouped them together and put them in concentration camp just because they were Asian. So, so I think that's where my pushback always comes from. You know what I'm saying? Like
when we push back against the notion of Black Lives Matter, like me being a black male, you a white male sitting here and we're talking about it, right?
Yeah.
If we can agree, and the one thing I don't like to do is comparative suffering, because there's always someone that has a worse story,
absolutely,
and stuff like that. So I don't do comparative suffering, right? But if we look at the way that this country is formatted, the way that it was set up, the way that it was structured economically, there was not as a significant economic impact from the Asian community as the black community, right?
Okay.
So they built the railroads, got it. We built the country, the entire country, right? My ancestors did. Now, when we look at this, when there becomes pushback, it solidifies the notion on those guys with the far right that, yeah, I don't have to worry about these guys because all lives matter. Right? They do. So why doesn't mine matter? You know what I mean? So when we do the comparative suffering, it can get confusing, but I ask you to open a little bit to the idea that Black Lives Matter is not about raising the bar for black people, right? It's not. Black Lives Matter, or the statement Black Lives Matter, is to make people pay attention to the way African Americans are treated, because Asians are allowed to get loans. I'm not. There's more things that draw back for me when it goes to get wealth gaining access, right? I can go in debt all I want to, but to try to generate wealth is harder for me than it is for an Asian, right? So we're just trying to bring the light to, and I'm not a Black Lives Matter activist or anything like that, but we're just trying to bring the statement Black Lives Matter means look at how we're treated.
Yeah, it's bridging the gap.
Right.
And I'm all for that. And no, Asians, yeah, they're the richest per capita race in the United States. They hold all the money now. So
right.
They're the 1%ers. First of all, I want to thank you. I have gained some perspective about the situation, which I knew I would. And I went into this interview hoping that I would. I appreciate the perspective that you've given me in this case, and further than that. You know, not just this case, but, you know, moving forward, you've explained some things to me that in a way that I absolutely understand it. And I 100% appreciate that. I want to go ahead and say that.
I mean, it was good to come, and I'm glad you invited me, because I enjoyed the first video. I liked the way that you broke it down in a nonsensical way. I did disagree at points, and I let that be known to you. And I like the fact that we can disagree on point. And these are the conversations that need to be had, right? You have to come into all these conversations with a willingness to open your perspective and to open the mind. And that's all that Blacks and African Americans in this country want. Hey, listen, what we're saying is not a lie. We just want you to look and see if you see it the way that we see it. So I go back to the 6'9" perspective. Come into the middle of where this drawing was, and then look at it. If we see the same thing, then we have to change it.
You're 100% right, man. And like I said, the appreciation goes out to you. I love having these conversations. I don't think we can change. I don't think America can change. I don't think we can change as a public without these conversations. And
exactly. We
have for too long either just turned off. I mean, I've talked to many people that are just like, nope, you're a racist. Done. Cool. Okay. You've made up your mind. And that's fine. You know, I love the fact that we were able to sit down and have this conversation about it. Because like I said, with perspective gains knowledge. And so I really appreciate you.
I'm just glad that you were willing to have the conversation, because a lot of people aren't. And it takes an intuitive mind, an intelligent mind, and a great heart to be able to do that and say, hey, I'm willing to come to the table and talk. Tell me your perspective. Help me. Enlighten me, you know. And, you know, being able to do that is great. It's great. So thank you for having me on, man. I really appreciate it.
I truly appreciate you. So I always try to give my guests an opportunity to plug anything they want to plug.
So I will be doing I'll be coming with a YouTube series that's going to come out. You know, be on the lookout for that. It's going to be called In All Seriousness. We're going to mix some political talk with some good comedy. So we'll have some sketches and things like that to try to bring a lighter tone to some of the issues that we face. I believe if we can laugh, then we can understand. And also, I would like to bring some awareness to the thought process that goes on in these cases. If ever you're watching the media and the victim of a crime is being demonized, turn the channel, because that doesn't happen normally. It doesn't happen normally. So if that's happening, you're probably not looking at a reputable news outlet. So just understand, talk to people. I encourage every single person to talk to your neighbors, talk to everybody, gain their perspective so that you can see whether it's a 6 or a 9.
Awesome, man. I truly appreciate you. All right, man. Hey, like I said, appreciate you. And thanks for coming on the show, brother.
You got it. Anytime.
Make sure you never miss a show by clicking the subscribe button now. This podcast is only made possible by you, the listener. So thank you for your support.